Hi everyone, my name is Gina Achapinti and I will be talking to you about the impact of child neglect in infancy and early childhood. I chose this topic because I was inspired by a friend that I had growing up that was adopted as a baby from a Romanian orphanage. As you may know, in 1989, the world discovered that 170,000 children were being raised in these impoverished institutions, which provided little to no physical contact. They were fed very little, bathed on a schedule, and changed. That's it. As my friends and I got older, I started to notice differences in her behavior that were unlike any of our peers. She was overly friendly, clingy, and cognitively delayed. I remember that she really struggled with her schoolwork. She knew no stranger and didn't seem to understand personal boundaries. When I was about 8 years old, I finally asked my mom why she was so different. That's when my mom vaguely explained to me that she hadn't experienced much physical contact as a baby and was very malnourished when she was essentially rescued from this orphanage. And so her brain didn't develop the same way as everyone else's. Being such a young child, I took my mother's word for truth and stopped asking questions. Now, as an adult, I wanted to know more about the true impact early childhood neglect can have on a person. First, I want to talk about how important adequate nutrition is to healthy growth and development. An insufficiency of key nutrients such as iron and iodine can cause impairment both in motor and cognitive development, which in most cases is often irreversible. Also, DHA, choline, folic acid, and zinc have been linked to early brain functioning and development. A shortage of proper nutrition during early life can reduce cell production, whereas a shortage a little bit later in life can affect cell size and complexity. Deficits can also affect complex processes of the brain, leading to less efficient communication between brain cells. Now, what does that mean? Malnutrition can cause poor test performance, attention deficits, and memory problems, just to name a few. Additionally, it can lead to the diagnosis of FFT, which is a failure to thrive. FFT is serious and in extreme cases can lead to death due to low weight, slow development, and lack of nutrition. Now, what happens when malnutrition is coupled with emotional and physical neglect? The list is extensive, unfortunately. Poor impulse control, social withdrawal, problems with coping and regulating emotions, low self-esteem, pathological behaviors such as tics, tantrums, stealing, and self-punishment, poor intellectual functioning, and low academic achievement are all consequences of neglect in early childhood. In children that have been born into neglectful situations, we also see delays in cognitive function, motor development, and language. How are they going to speak if no one's talking to them? These children also have trouble with executive functions, which include cognitive flexibility, inhibitory control, and working memory, as well as development of theory of mind and the ability to understand the mental states of others. With my friend, I remember that she often didn't understand why I felt the way that I felt, and I was pretty confused on why she didn't understand. Just as I explained earlier about my friend, the most common behavior exhibited in post-institutionalized, neglected children is indiscriminate friendliness. She wanted to hug, hold hands, and cling to whoever was around her. After doing this research, I've learned that the friendliness is something like a coping mechanism, which the child often carries throughout his or her entire life. It doesn't go away. Disrupted cortisol patterns have also been observed in neglected children. Cortisol, which is typically known as the stress hormone, normally peaks after waking, then decreases throughout the day, and is at its lowest point at bedtime. Megan Gunner, who created the International Adoption Project, examined these neglected children that were adopted from overseas. What she found is that children with a history of neglect typically have less cortisol rhythm over the course of the day, and these abnormal cortisol patterns have been linked to the stunted physical growth and the indiscriminate friendliness that I keep bringing up. These abnormal patterns are only associated with childhood neglect, not physical or sexual abuse, and have been linked to many psychological disorders such as anxiety, mood disorders, behavioral problems, and PTSD. Now let's talk a little bit about attachment issues that we see in neglected children. 82% of children that are neglected or mistreated are classified to have disorganized attachment or insecure disorganized attachment. What this means, according to our textbook, is that these babies are disorganized and disoriented, appear to be dazed, confused, and fearful, and also show strong patterns of avoidance and resistance. This is not at all, obviously, the ideal attachment type. Additionally, the neglected children tend to have poor social adaptation, which includes social withdrawal and minimal positive interactions with their peers. These children have a tendency to be more aggressive, uncooperative, and non-compliant than the non-maltreated children, but still less aggressive than the physically abused. A little bit more in cognitive effects, and then we'll be done. There's a dramatic decline in scores on the Bayley scales of infant development between 9 and 24 months. Just a reminder, the Bayley scales are used to assess infant development across 5 different scales, which include cognition, language, motor, socio-emotional, and adaptive. Finally, these children tend to have poor impulse control, are easily frustrated, show little flexibility and creativity in problem solving, and again, typically score lower on IQ measures. Thanks for watching my presentation on the impact of neglect in infancy and childhood. Bye.